Everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you can hear us okay. We are absolutely delighted to be at the MPTS this year to talk about accessibility and inclusion in the film and TV industry. Before I let my amazing panellists introduce themselves, my name's Ellie. I'm the project lead of the TV Access Project. I'm a white woman in my mid-30s. I have brownish hair that's tied up. I'm wearing a black top and green trousers. And the TV Access Project is an alliance of the 9 largest broadcasters and streamers in the UK who are working together towards a goal of full inclusion for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent talent by 2030. Our stand is actually just here, so if you've not had the chance to chat to us yet, please do come and visit us this afternoon. And what is really special about this panel, what we're doing is working together from commissioning and broadcaster level to really change the structures of how programme making is done. And then our brilliant speakers are actually putting that into practice on a day-to-day basis on the programmes that they're working on. So firstly, Josh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Josh. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm tall and I've got blonde hair, and I am an assistant producer and a video editor.
I'm Pauline Stone. I'm in my late 50s. I have short blonde hair. My sign name is Blonde. I'm wearing dark glasses, dark frame glasses, a blue top and burgundy trousers.
And hi, my name's Kyla Harris. I'm an actor, producer, creator, writer. So many things. It feels like a blog. I am a wheelchair user. I'm a person of color in my early 40s with kind of black shaggy hair. I'm wearing a black dress, they kind of look like Star Wars boots, not gonna lie, and some gold jewelry.
And I'm going to kick straight off with you, Kyla, because we've recently had series 2 of We Might Regret This come out. Congratulations. It's a really beautiful programme, and what I really loved about it is that it didn't shy away from some of the really awkward physical barriers, but also some of the frankly stupid comments that you receive as a disabled person that I'm sure many of us can relate to. Was that something that was really important for you to see represented on screen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that we're missing about representation, especially when it comes to a variety of disability representation, is just the everyday. I kind of want to know and give people this idea of what everyday kind of looks like. Mainly because I think when I first had my accident, there was just no representation on screen, and this was about 25 years ago. And trigger warning, but when I first had my accident, this doctor came to me and said to my mom and I, she'll never walk again in this incredibly dramatic, tragic way. And my automatic response was, well, then I don't want to live. And I'd never knowingly known someone who was disabled before. I didn't have much experience. There wasn't on-screen representation. Anything that there was kind of pitted in these tragedy or inspiration tropes, and really made me feel like it was better to be dead than disabled, which was kind of the predominant message. And with representation, and we might regret this, we wanted people to see just that daily life continues and exists, and it's beautiful and it's messy and it's full of love and friendship and chaos, and just like everyone else's life.
Yeah, that's what I really loved about it, is that every day isn't necessarily a huge drama. It is just those day-to-day intimacy with a partner or being able to navigate your own home. I think that's really important to share on screen, which is really special. And we've moved away a huge amount from, as you say, those tropes of superhero. I've particularly noticed that in sports broadcasting as well, because there was that kind of big superhero campaign in sports. You do a lot of work in sports, Josh. Has that been an important element for you, seeing that representation on screen?
Yeah, I mean, I've not worked on the Paralympic sports, but I've worked with a lot of presenters over the years who have now come into mainstream, so like JJ Chalmers, who works at BBC Sport on the Channel 4 side of things. I've seen people like Adam Hills and Billy Munger, work on the F1, and I think having that representation on screen for disabled people, but not only for disabled people, for the wider population, is important, because in sport we're very underrepresented, and I feel like people only become conscious of Paralympic sport and disabled sport in general every Summer Olympic cycle, which was previously the Paris Olympics. So I think it's important that we see that across more sports, whether that be rugby or football or wheelchair basketball. I think we should see more of that on mainstream broadcasters, as well as the big two pay-per-view broadcasters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And not getting rolled out once every 4 years. So I want to talk about, and I really want you to feel like you take away lots of tips from today. I think that's one thing with accessibility and inclusion. It's so easy to just go away and make small changes straight away in the way that your processes work. And one of the roles that has been absolutely instrumental over the past few years has been the introduction of the Access Coordinator. It's one of the roles that was mentioned in Jack Thorne's McTaggart lecture back in 2020, where he talked about the failure of the industry on disabled people. And it's been incredible to see how quickly a brand new role has been taken up by the industry. For anyone who might not have heard of the role before, Pauline, tell us a little bit, what is an access coordinator?
Access coordinators. I've been an access coordinator about 4 years now, and I come from a long history of being a production manager. But the access coordinators now, what we do, we work primarily with people who identify as being deaf, disabled, or neurodiverse. And we work to ensure that there's inclusion and access within a production. That's our primary role, but that's a little bit like saying a sound recordist records sound. That's my very basic level. I do a lot of other stuff, so I work with productions even at green light stage when they're thinking about access and they're considering an access storyline. I talk to them about budgets, I talk to them about terminology, how to find crew who identify as deaf, disabled or neurodiverse. I work with script editors who are looking at scripts, and they're looking at the wording, the phrasing, how somebody who's disabled might move from A to B. I work with directors on ensuring that there is visibility on screen and correct representation. I work across all the departments on a production, from green light all the way through to post-production, so I advise as well. A lot of you'll know a lot of Soho is inaccessible unless you love climbing stairs. So there's a lot of things I do all the way through, and I generally, as I say, I work with people who identify as deaf, disabled, and neurodiverse, but I also work with people who are returning to the industry, mothers who are returning after having children, people who've had surgery, coming back after having injuries. And I work on a lot of series that come back, so returning series. So I speak to everybody every year because access changes as you go on, as you get older, as your life changes. So I speak to all the cast and crew to assess access. I speak to the contributors on unscripted. And I work with clients as well, so people who are coming into your companies to see for meetings. And I work with the facilities companies as well to make their trucks, their all the stuff you guys might be hiring accessible for your crew. So it's like I say, it's got a simple start, but it expands out and it covers a lot of different things.
Yeah. And I mean, one of my questions is, what can an AC help with from day one? But what is day one? Because I think day one for different people means different things.
Yeah, day one varies. With the drama that I'm currently about to move on to, I was approached 6 months ago to discuss budgets, to discuss the script, discuss the storyline, and some of my role as well, because of the top 9 broadcasters that you have linked to TAP. Part of their remit is to ensure that accessibility is forefront. So I have production companies approach me and say, we've got this project, it's been greenlit, we need to discuss access with the commissioner, with the broadcaster, can you advise us on this? And I help with that. And then some productions I come in once they're in prep, and they know what they're doing and they need somebody to organise access. And then with some unscripted, I come in quite late. I might come in a couple of days before when they suddenly realise they don't know where to find a ramp or they don't know where to find something. So it's day one, it varies a heck of a lot from depending on what sort of genre you're working on. But
and to your point, members of the TV Access project, it's been built into all commissioning conversations now. So when you've got a commission by one of TAP's 9 members, there will be a conversation around, do you need an access coordinator? Have you considered bringing one onto your production? And looking at, because I think there will be naturally productions that one of your programs was Code of Silence. So naturally, access coordinators are really important. But actually, you're being used on children's TV, unscripted TV. It's just being filtered across all genres now, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I work on various arts award shows as well. So not necessarily something that is a program in the structure of a scripted or an unscripted. So I'm working with performers and citation readers and all the guests who come. So I did Sky Arts Award last year and I had over 600 people that I spoke to.
Wow.
So I'm speaking to everybody because it's, whilst yes, there were people who were nominated who were wheelchair users, there were also people who have other access requests who are guests for the evening. So I speak to everybody. In general, I mean, the production I'm just finishing on now, we've had 1,500 supporting artists. So I have a conversation. I don't necessarily have a one-to-one conversation, but I've been in contact with all of them to say, hi, I'm Pauline. This is what I do. Do you have anything? Do you have any access requirements?
Yeah. And they can reach out to you at any stage
exactly.
as well.
All across the production, yeah.
Amazing. And you worked with one on We Might Regret This. What difference did that make for? Because you wore many hats. You wear all the hats on that show, don't you?
Yes, many hats. Sometimes I say I should be a Milner. I wear so many hats. We had. So season 2 just came out, as you mentioned, Ellie, and we had a team of access coordinators on the first season, and then we had two different access coordinators on the second season, and they were fantastic in many different ways, and I think we learned so much from the first season. There was a lot that we came across that we just hadn't anticipated. Like, for instance, we were filming in outside of a train station in the first season, and it was still needed to be open, obviously, for members of the public to use. We're not that rich, so we couldn't close up the station, and members of the public kept on coming up to me, and I had quite a confrontational experience with one of the members of the public who was really ableist towards me, and it felt really ironic for it to be happening on the set of the show that's about, that really addresses ableism. And we realized that the security guards hadn't been briefed to kind of interfere and be a bit more of like a bodyguard for me and protect me in those situations, so that it doesn't, impact so that the prejudice that I experienced doesn't affect the rest of my day and work, which obviously it would. And so that's something that we took to the next season, was that we made sure that every department took care of these protective measures as well, so that I was in a bit more of a bubble and felt safe in any situation that we were filming in. So So access coordinators were involved from in that respect. I also, spoiler alert, there is a pool scene in the second season where I float. I cannot float. It was an absolute illusion. But one of the things that we had to do was go to Pinewood Studios and test out what it would be like for me to float and how I could float unaided. And so I was strapped up to a bunch of foam with a bunch of divers in this underwater tank in Pinewood Studios, and access coordinators were there to make sure that was safe. Had a great conversation as well with the divers, and I was like, so is this what you normally do? And they're like, yes. And I said, great. Who was in here last? What you're doing? And they were like, well, I think the last person I was cradling, because I was being cradled, was Tom Cruise when he was shooting Mission Impossible 954 or whatever it is, and I think, well, this is the only thing that Tom Cruise and I will ever have in common. But again, like access coordinators also are involved in kind of safeguarding, safekeeping, in terms of logistics of like how I get in and out of a pool. Anything that we needed that was particular to the script and what we scripted, because when we were writing the show, we would often write something and then it would be kind of like time to make it, and we'd be, oh right, we have to do that. And figuring out the practicalities of having to do that was necessary with an access coordinator.
And we were talking backstage earlier about, we as disabled people showing up in the workplace, we aren't just doing our jobs, we're also educators, we're advocates. We've always had to come with that lens for productions. When I specialised in being a casting producer, and I, alongside that, I would be the access coordinator, and I would be the person making sure that all of our casting processes were accessible. And then you're doing it for yourself as a disabled person as well. So I think that's the amazing part of the role of access coordinator, is it frees you up as a disabled person just to be able to do your job, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Oh, well, I mean, because every situation is different, there are things that you can't account for, of course, that do slip under the net. But that's all I want to be doing. Like, actually, I don't want to be talking about like disability language. Like, I mean, I do, to be fair, but not when I'm working on set.
when you're in the mood for an argument.
Yeah, exactly. Not when I'm, not when I have a clapperboard in front of me.
Yeah.
And so it really does free me up, and we made sure that everyone on set, from crew to cast, had access training as well, so that hopefully that would stop more of the questions and free me up as well.
Yeah. And what feedback do you get from producers?
In my role, as what my role does.
If they've worked with they work with you for the first time, what kind of feedback do they get?
I think people generally respect what I'm doing, and in many situations, exactly as you've just said, it frees up that person to do what they need to do. And it also means that producers themselves aren't having to solve those problems, solve those things that are coming up. I always think about, when I work with productions, that I'm taking something off their shoulders. I'm not giving them more problems. If there's something that somebody comes to me and says, I need this or I need this, I can find the solution and then go to the production manager or the line producer and say, Bob needs this. The best place to get this is this place, or this, or this. So I'm finding a solution before I'm even explaining something to people. Yeah. And I think as well that I get a good reaction from agents as well. I approach all the agents that have cast that I work with. And I think they're seeing it as a really positive change within our industry, because their clients are getting the access they require. And nobody's ever asked these people, do you have any access requirements? They're just booked for a couple of days. That's it. They're coming in, they're doing their job, and they're going. But if somebody needs to have a slightly different lighting in their three-way, or if they prefer to have a walk around the set before they get there and just look at how it's set, or feel the weight of their props before they handle them, it means that actor or that cast member can do a better job, and that in turn means that the day runs smoother, the day runs better, the day runs quicker. So I think from producers, they see that the work I'm doing is important, and something like Code of Silence, we had, I think you're probably going to ask about this in a sec, but I'll do it now. With Code of Silence, we had deaf crew members in every department. So that meant we had interpreters in. We had between 10 and 15 BSL interpreters in every day across a 15-week shoot. And we also had interpreters in prep. So organising that for some overworked production secretary is a massive amount. But to have me there and just go, right, I've got you your 15 interpreters, this interpreter's with this person, and managing that as a department with support workers, so managing my own team of support workers on a production, that takes another not a burden, but another thing for the production department to think about, for something to have to do. And even just sort of speaking to the locations department when I've done recce's and saying, right, this lovely, lovely building that's 100 years old, 200 years old, is completely inaccessible to the director. So can we get a ramp? Can we do this? Can we do that? And finding those solutions without even involving producers a lot of the time, I think it takes that work away from them, that they have enough to think about. They're sort of wearing that hat and they've got plenty to be doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and knowing that it'll be done properly as well.
Yeah, and sorted, yeah.
And the that onboarding stage and bringing access coordinators on is so important early, because that really sets the tone and sets people up. And Josh, you've had experiences where that access hasn't been put in place when you've joined, and it's had a real ripple effect then on the rest of the job.
Yeah, and we were alluding it to just a minute ago. So I had a situation where I started a new job. They asked me, could I start my new job 2 weeks later than we originally planned, so we could get everything ready for you and rewrite your contracts and get everything ready for you. So I went in on the first day. My accessible monitors weren't there, my laptop wasn't ready, my assigned desk wasn't assigned, and the person who was line managing me was really embarrassed at the time. So I said, look, I've worked in IT before, I'll go and speak to the people who look after it, I'll sort it. So I basically spent the first 2 weeks of my job, which was quite stressful because I was working on sport, sorting out somebody else's role, basically. I was doing their job for them. So then after that sort of first 3-week learning curve, I was fine. But it's like, if you're given that responsibility, whether you're an IT coordinator or a line manager or you work in HR, and you've had 2 extra weeks to get everything ready, it's kind of a farce, you know. So overcome that hurdle, and then the next sort of thing was like employees learning about my disability, because obviously they'd not been briefed properly either. So then I had to sort of have conversations with producers and researchers and production assistants and production managers and production coordinators, and the vast majority of people were great, but a few people would use clumsy language, you know, things like, oh, if you just look properly. Well, to say that to somebody who can't see properly isn't appropriate. And it's things, little things like that where, you know, I even suggested to my line manager, maybe these 2 members of staff could just redo the disability awareness training modules, just so they know for next time not to then do that again, you know. Just little things like that, small things, but small things make a big difference, especially when you're working on such a, you know, big production, or in a big production team of, you know, over 50, 60 people.
Yeah, and when it's such as a freelancer, you're coming on for, like in sports, you know, the FA Cup isn't going to wait for you to get your monitor and your access requirements in place, is it?
No, but you know what was interesting? I actually joined at the end of the football season, so it was like, by, how can I describe this? By them saying to me, oh, we need an extra 2 weeks to get everything ready, I then missed out the opportunity to work on an FA Cup final, because anyone who works in production management or, you know, logistics, if you do anything at Wembley Stadium, you have to submit your paperwork to the FA a week before for everyone who's accredited who's coming on site. So then I missed that opportunity to work on an FA Cup final because of my accessibility requirements not being met and people not doing things as quick as they should.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier about you're then having to be an advocate for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really you just want to get on with the job.
You just want to get stuck in and do what you've been asked to do, because especially with sport, there's a lot of variable things that can go wrong. So like, one thing that happened when I was working on the football, the Queen sadly passed away, so that's never happened in how many ever years, has it? So what then happens is we get on a call with the Premier League, and the Premier League say to us, right, next weekend's fixtures are cancelled. So then that's a whole load of work for the production management team, a whole load of work for the editorial team, a whole load of work for people behind the scenes, to then cancel all those people for that weekend, whether those be floor managers, match directors, sound people, and rearrange it for when them games get rearranged towards the end of the season. So it was an interesting experience, but not one that I was sort of like uncomfortable with. I quite enjoy the chaos at times, because it's just constant problem solving.
Yeah, we love a bit of chaos in TV. The next thing I want to talk about is money. Everyone wants to know about the money. But before I do, please remember that you can submit your own questions on Slido, and in a second I will check whether any have come through. But please do submit your questions and we will come to them. Money. So one of the things that I love telling people, because this is always the always one of the barriers as a programme maker, as a production company, that budgets are getting smaller, the money for a production has to go further. And to acknowledge this, one of the first things that was announced by the TV Access Project was a commitment by all of our members to fund access on production above and separately from the production budget. And that has been such a huge initiative. There's never been anything like it before. And it just means there's absolutely no excuses, there's no barriers, there's no financial hurdles to make sure that all of your programmes are accessible. And we have recently undergone an audit. It's probably about 2 years that's been available across all 9 of our members now. And it's amazing to kind of see how that money's been requested. So if you have a commission, for example, by the BBC, you would put your funding request into the BBC. If it was with ITV, it would go through ITV. Pauline, is that something that you talk to the productions that you work with? Is that something that you're having to remind them?
It is. I think, again, another hat. I used to be a production manager, so I come from a point of view where I understand that budgets are incredibly tight. So when I speak to productions about the money for access, I come from a point of view of understanding where they're coming from. So it's not an argument, it's a discussion of like minds. Yes, with Code of Silence, we did apply for funding from TAP via the ITV fund. It's mainly designed for, whilst Code of Silence had a D&I line, a diversity and inclusion line within its budget to cover things like the interpreters we knew we would need to use. But there were other things as the production goes on. We had a junior crew member who was neurodiverse, who found taking public transport too overwhelming. So we arranged for her to have taxis to and from the production base in the morning or from the location. We did an estimate of how much we thought that would be, and we submitted it to ITV. So to cover the cost of all her cabs across the production were covered by the TAP fund at ITV. That's not something we could have ever predicted because we didn't know that this crew member was joining us. But it was an access requirement to ensure that junior member could join the production and do her training and do her job and arrive on time and feel comfortable and be less stressed. So there's that's a very simple thing. And with ITV as well, it's a very simple four-question form, I think, for ITV. I think it is, what is the barrier? Is the barrier, what is the solution to the barrier? Is it for somebody who's on screen or behind screen, and how much does it cost? So it's 4 simple questions that you have to ask. And that's really simple if you think, yes, it's a ramp. It's for somebody, we need a ramp for 2 days for somebody who is a cast member, and it costs X amount. And that's the simple way. It's of just sort of, costs that you can't predict are covered. But I would always say to people, anticipate that you will have disabled, deaf, disabled, neurodiverse cast and crew, and get that D&I line into your budget, especially if you're having discussions early on at green light stage with the broadcaster and they're asking about it. Say, yeah, I want to put some money. I don't know how I'll spend it, but if that money is there and you've said, yes, I think it will be for ramp. I think this lovely Victorian building is inaccessible. We're going to need something there. Even for the camera guys to get the mag liner into the building, which is one of the things I always say. If the crew are having trouble with a mag liner, how's somebody in a wheelchair going to get in? So that's access for them as well. And you don't want the gaffer trying to lift a light up some steps when he's put his back out 3 weeks ago. So that's an access requirement for the gaffer. Do you know what I mean? So it's lots of different things that you can apply for the funding for.
And I should say congratulations, because Code of Silence won a BAFTA.
We did.
This weekend.
We won the BAFTA at the weekend.
And it was absolutely beautiful to see Rose and the exec Bridie, who works on the TV Access Project, talk about how inclusive it was as a production and what a difference that can make as well. So yeah, it was lovely seeing that on TV. Thank you for explaining the process as well, because I think that's one thing that TAP really worked hard to do, is to make sure sure that it's a very simple process and that it's consistent across all of our members as well, because we know producers will be making programmes for different broadcasters throughout the course of a year. And it's a quick response as well. 10 working days is the maximum for your commissioning body to come back to you by, to make it just a simple, straightforward process as possible. Did you utilise that on We Might Regret This, and how have you found the support from your kind of commissioning body to be?
Yeah, well, a lot of people think that this is going to be a sad story. Say, what support did you get from your commissioning body? But the BBC was fantastic with access. They have an inclusion lead there that is called Nicola Gard.
Yes, it was Nicola, but somebody else now. But
they're hiring someone new at the moment.
Nicola Gard used to be the
Diversity, Equity and Inclusion lead, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah, the DIE lead. Yeah.
And although I can't remember the titles, they were incredibly supportive. Really, really fantastic, because we knew that we needed access from the beginning. As I say, like, there would often be times where we'd script something in and be like, oh, forgot that we were going to be doing that. What do we do now that we're in production? But beforehand, obviously because of me acting in it as well, we made sure that the set was totally accessible, and we also changed the filming hours. So I'm really not good with mornings. It's kind of like getting a fish out of a freezer or something. That's me in the morning. Never said that before, but I'm going to from now on. And it takes me quite some time to thaw. So I have to do late mornings. So our starting days was actually 11 a.m. and that's like unheard of for a lot of productions. And the BBC were just like, yeah, cool, good, thumbs up, we'll support that. So yeah, they were really fantastic.
I think it's important to highlight that, because I hear from indies who are still quite nervous to approach their commissioners to say, we need a bit of help with this, we might need a bit of money for this. And actually, I think the broadcasters are so ready for you to ask for that help, aren't they?
Yeah, I think each of the broadcasters has their own D&I lead anyway, so there's always somebody that you can ask that's part of, it'll either be your business affairs manager or it'll be a D&I lead at each different broadcaster who'll be able to talk to you about that, definitely, yeah.
One of the questions that's come in, it fits in quite nicely with this. What's the main thing throughout the production process, and I guess you can all speak to this, that's consistently missed?
I'll put disabled toilets in there. It was the title of Jack Thorne's lecture at the Edinburgh Television Festival, and it was based off a production I did called Then Barbara Met Alan, and it was in the middle of the summer, and it was just post-COVID, and all the festivals were on, and there was not a single disabled toilet available. And it's one of those things, that sort of thing gets forgotten sometimes. It's just, in the mass of productions getting busy and trying to sort stuff, some things just get forgotten about. But we try, those sort of things are now, with Access Coordinates, it's at the front of our mind. I work on Landscape Artist of the Year. So every time I'm seeing a location, I'm thinking, where are the toilets? Where are the facilities? Where can I store medications? Where can I, there's lots of things that I now think about, and part of what Jack was saying was you need somebody to think about all those bits and pieces that do get missed.
Yeah, me and Jack had a conversation about toilets the other day.
Oh,
we all got very excited about how many more accessible toilets there are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very sexy conversations in disability.
I think one of the things that is constantly overlooked, and I think to some degree it was in a way on our production as well, was food. Oh my gosh, food. I'm like, this is supposed to be fueling us for like 12, 16 hours sometimes. And I feel like it's a lot of like chips with a side of rice with a side of bread. And I often don't feel like my body is fueled in the way that I need it to be, or supported. And we actually also had Emma Seedy, who is now on Saturday Night Live and played one of the Olivias in the series. If you know the series and the Olivias, you'll know. And it was her first job after she'd had a child, and she was still breastfeeding. And she was just like, I need snacks. And so I always made sure that there were snacks on set. I mean, I got in touch with the access coordinators to make sure, but again, that was another one of my hats as an exec producer. But so I think really food is often undervalued as, like, ironically, as a way of sustaining people, whether you're disabled or not, through the day, and also for people who have caring responsibilities that need extra fuel.
Yeah, I found that particularly in, I come from an unscripted background, and when you're doing location work, it's perhaps not as structured as a scripted program, and no one remembers to schedule in the lunch breaks. They're really, you're nodding along, is that similar in sport and what you do?
Yeah, I remember going to Nottingham Forest a few years ago, and basically the series producer and the production manager have the benefit of touring the venue or the football ground maybe a week before or a few days before. And I'd never been to this ground over my life before, because they've only just come back up to the Premier League at the time. So I was like, I didn't know where the toilets were, I didn't know where the media suite was, I didn't know where the sort of the facilities were for the crew in terms of catering. So I pretty much, in addition to doing the show on the day, I had to sort of suss out where things were. And like you've just alluded to there, we had a crew working on a lunchtime football programme, and then about an hour and a bit later they had to work on a 3 p.m. Premier League kickoff. So it's kind of like no one had built into the sort of running order where they'd have their sort of lunch, and that was like glaringly obvious at the time. But when you're planning it on paper, you should always factor that in when you're looking at running orders and crew rotoring and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's so important that rest break.
Yeah,
isn't it? For people who are neurodivergent,
especially when a football match can be 90 minutes as well, because you don't know how long it's going to be with added time and stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. I would love to just keep on those different genres, actually. What are the main differences? Are there any differences in genres when thinking around access?
There are some differences. I think with scripted, access is always considered really early, I find. So the dramas or the comedies that I work on, people are thinking about the access really early because they're having those conversations. I think with unscripted, because it's a lot more seat in your pants, documentaries, that sort of thing, it's considered slightly later. And I find that I'm asked about stuff later when people have suddenly realised one of their contributors needs to get on a train from Nottingham, say, down to London, and they don't know how to book access for travelling by train. So there's lots of little bits like that differ. Essentially, it's exactly the same. The crews still need access. You might need access for your contributors rather than cast members. So as an industry, I think the questions you need to ask are still the same, and the access requirements you need to put in place are the same. But mostly, I would say, yeah, it just depends. I think from my point of view, it varies how long I'm on a project, how much I'm involved. With something like Code of Silence, I started very early on and worked the full 9 months every day. With something like Landscape, I come in and I do the recce's and I do days here and I speak to contributors. And then other things, I'm there all of the prep and 1 day a week. So I think with the more intense dramas, I'm there all the time. And then sort of with unscripted, I'm in and out a little bit, but I always say I'm on call. So my phone's always on, and it's like if there's ever a concern or a question or something that needs sorting for the next day, I'm still available.
Yeah. And have you found the same as well, because you won an Emmy for your documentary? So have you noticed the difference between scripted and unscripted?
Yeah, I would actually say that I experienced the opposite. But I think that's because I was the producer. You know, so I produced a documentary, a feature-length documentary in the U.S. called Patrice the Movie, and we made sure that that access was so embedded into the practice, and because it was there was essentially the director was also the camera person, and we had one sound person. We were able to be so much more nimble around access because I think flexibility is an access need. And so we were able to be super nimble because we had such a small crew. And we were able to do that throughout every stage of the process because the main contributors were disabled as well. And it just became a part of our principles of like making. It was so embedded in the making of the documentary. So I think anything, like if you think about it from the beginning and almost plan in flexibility, I know that sounds, then I think that that's a real advantage as well.
I'm just looking through the questions. Not a question, but I want to say that I helped facilitate a unit base, and we might regret this. Someone in the audience? Anyone want to give away?
There
we go. And then for Pauline, how did you get into being an access coordinator?
I worked on a production called Then Barbara Met Alan with Bryony Arnold 4 or 5 years ago now, and I was the production manager, and we had, I think, about 150 supporting artists who were all disabled because Jack wanted representation on screen of the disabled people in the story to be disabled. And it kind of fell as part of my job because nobody else really wanted to get involved to ensure that all of the supporting artists had the access requirements were in place, and also the crew. So as well as rolling in trucks and sorting budgets and having discussions with the broadcaster, I was sorting access, and I kind of walked away from it completely exhausted, but realised that this was something that was actually quite important. And about a year later, Screen Skills, after Jack Thorne's lecture, Screen Skills started a training programme. It was done with Bridge 06 in the first year, and now it's done with Triple C. Thank you very much, Ellie. So there have been 3 training courses, and the training course I did in the second year was a year-long course. So there was an essential starting period, and then we had a weekly lecture. So I got onto that course, and from that I met Bryony again, and she asked me to do Code of Silence. So that's kind of where it came from, but I think it was helpful for me being a production manager and understanding all the departments, looking out here and talking to somebody about LTO and talking to somebody about lenses. I have a broad experience of the whole of a production from beginning to end, so I could see where access was needed at each of those pinch points and how a production works when access isn't in place, when you don't have the toilets, or when access is in place. So with something like Code of Silence, it was easy to come to it and just see, right, you're going to need this, you're going to need this, you're going to need this. And as a PM, I know how much that's going to cost, and I know what that will help and who that will help and how the budget will work because we've included that. So anybody who's interested, I would say contact Triple C. They're more than likely to be running another cohort of training with Screen Skills. Screen Skills also have a lot of really useful information about access coordination, and the TAP website does as well, and also the PACT has the TAP PACT toolkit, which is designed for producers, but it'll help anybody who's interested in access or improving their understanding of access if they don't have somebody like me on board their production.
You're doing my job for me.
Oh,
Thank you. I'm afraid we've only got a minute left. One thing I wanted to kind of touch on was the challenges ahead. So maybe from each of you, summing up in a sentence, either what are some of the challenges ahead, or is there a challenge you want to set attendees today to go away and think about?
All I'd say is just don't make a snap judgment about somebody because they've got a disability. Every person on this stage now has a different kind of disability. Some people have visible ones, some people have invisible ones. But let's concentrate more going forward on the ability of the person rather than just how that's going to inconvenience me as a production manager or how that's going to inconvenience me as a producer. Take on board the feedback that that person gives, and also if that person's worked with another production manager or producer previously, reach out to that production manager or producer. I've had that myself. I'm working on football, where the production manager I was working for reached out to somebody in the documentaries unit and asked them, what additional requirements does Josh need, or do we have to do additional paperwork? So just use common sense and please be self-aware and respectful. That's all.
Awesome.
I would just say ask. As Josh just mentioned, ask that person what their access requirements are. Even if it's even at the end of your email, just say, if you have any access requirements, if you would prefer to communicate with me in a different format, let me know. It's such a simple thing to add, and when you're sort of interviewing new crew members, where new employees, just say, do you have any access requirements that you need for this interview? Any access requirements for your job? It's a very simple. So ask that, but don't ask what's wrong with you, that person, I would say. That's the other one. Don't ask me what's wrong with me.
I think I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that so many people have this idea of, wanting to quote unquote get it right and not get it wrong. And actually, to me, loads of people, my closest friends, my best friends, my partner, whoever, mistakes are part of the process and part of learning. And I think that as long as you don't get defensive and take responsibility, or have an open conversation about it, I think that there's so much to be learned and shared from that experience.
Progress over perfection. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences with me today. Thank you for coming. My ask of you is to engage with the work of TAP. Come see us, look at the websites, and thank you for joining us.